and one of the high school's pharaohs who elevated Joseph, the wise Hebrew, to the position of viceroy of Egypt. Because of this, Joseph saved Egypt from starvation. In the process of the time, the Egyptians from the city of Thebes, Upper Egypt, waged wars of liberation against the Hyksos. The new powerful native Egyptian leader advocated an ardent nationalist policy to regain control of the government. As a result, the Hyksos were expelled from Egypt. The new kingdom, or new empire, had arose, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more mightier than we. Come on, let us deal with them wisely, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that there falleth out any war, that they join unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Much proof points to the fact that the new pharaohs who ascended to the throne was Ahmose the first, or Ames, the first king of the brilliant 18th dynasty, 1580 through 1557 BC. He reestablished the government at Thebes, expelled the Hyksos, and instituted something like a fascist form of government. This government was an autocratic nationalist regime, exercising regimentation of industry, rigid censorship, and forcible suppression of opposition. The period of the nationalist dynasty marked a turning point in the fortunes of the Hebrews. They were once well thought of by the overthrown Hyksos kings. Now they lost their favored status, and their previous contributions to the nations were ignored. Their freedom of movement was restricted, male genocide was decreed, and gradually the Hebrews were reduced to slavery. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multitude and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they were made to serve was with rigor. The king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of much of the name of was one Shaphrah, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, When ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then you shall kill him. But if it is a daughter, then she shall live. During the period that the Hebrews were slaves for Pharaoh, they built many of the megalithic structures. The Hebrews erected some pyramids. They dug a great and many channels for the rivers. They built walls for the cities and ramparts. They constructed the halls at Karnak and Thutmose the first. They built the temple of the pylons, the Hypastos halls, and the obelisk, for Amenhotep III. By the edict of Ramses II, they constructed at Thebes the temple of the Ram Museum with its colossal structures of himself, that they built the treasure cities of Pithom and Ramses. Naturally, the Hebrews were not the only slaves in Egypt. There were Ethiopian slaves, Nubian, Canaanite, Syrians, and people from the Asian islands, but the Hebrew slaves were in the majority. The new kingdom, or new empire age, consisted of the most remarkable and outstanding black personalities known, not only in Egypt, but in the entire civilized world. They were brilliant men possessed with gallantry and the capability to recognize the civil and military administrations. After the Asiatic invaders had humiliated the Egyptians, the people rapidly forgot their phobias of horses and learned to use chariots. They manufactured sophisticated weapons out of iron. The generals organized horsemen and other soldiers into mighty expedition forces to conquer Syria, Mitanni, and the territory extending the fourth cataract of the Nile. In the year 1501 BC, the fourth king of the 18th dynasty enthroned himself. He was Thutmose III, known as the Hornet because he wore his insignia on his crown. Tutmosis III was the son of Tutmosis I and a concubine, Isis. His qualities of face were pure ink black, a broad nose and thick lips. He reigned jointly with his wife and half-sister, Queen Hatshepsut, ruled alone from 1481 through 1447 BC. Thutmose was one of the greatest Egyptian kings. He began his rule by disposing his father in a palace revolution, but his queen was temporarily pushed aside by the revolution of Thutmose I, his father, and second, his brother. Eventually, he regained control of the government, invaded Syria with a great army in 1479, defeated the king of Kadesh and Megiddo. Thutmose III really lived up to his reputation as the Flying Hornet. He waged 17 military campaigns in Asia. His navy conquered the lands of the Aegean Sea and added them to his colossal empire. Many years after the death of Thutmose III, a new king called Amenhotep IV became a religious innovator. He was not an excellent soldier or governor. He believed in one God, the sun god, Aten, who dominated all living creatures. Because he was excessively preoccupied with religion, he neglected the kingdom. He ordered that the temples of the old Egyptian gods be closed, and he expelled the priesthood. Also, he changed his name from Amenhotep to Akhenaten, which means Aten is satisfied. He transferred his capital from Thebes to Tel El Amarna. When Akhenaten attempted to revolutionize the religion, this act divided the Egyptian aristocracy and weakened the government. Furthermore, Akhenaten was too busy to send military assistance to the Egyptian allies or to the remote countries of the empire, which was threatened by revolt or invasion. One of the kings of the 18th or 19th dynasties was informed by his astrologer or sacred scribe that a child would be born to the Hebrew nation. If he were permitted to live, he would bring the Egyptian kingdom to low condition. The child was born. His name was Moses. He was reared in a miraculous way in Pharaoh's own palace by his daughter. The plot to destroy Moses in his infancy failed. The daughter of Pharaoh adopted Moses as her son. She came to her father and said, "I have brought up a child who is of a divine form and of a generous mind, and I have received him from the bounty of the river in a wonderful manner. I thought it proper to adopt him for my son and the heir of thy kingdom." When she put the child into Pharaoh's hand, he hugged the child and put his diadem upon his head. But Moses cast down the diadem to the ground, and in the childish mood, he twisted it around and stamped on it. The sacred scribe saw all of this. He was the same astrologer who foretold that Moses would bring down the Egyptian kingdom. Because of this, the astrologer cried out in a terrifying manner, saying, "This, O king, this child is he of whom God foretold that if we kill him, we shall be no longer in danger." He himself afforded an attestation to the prediction of the same thing, but by his trampling upon the government and treading upon thy diadem, the astrologer advocated to have Moses executed in order to free the Egyptian from fear and to deprive the Hebrews of hope and freedom. At this intense moment, the daughter of Pharaoh took the child quietly. He was not disposed to hurt her. When events arrived at this juncture, the divine providence protected Moses, prevailing upon the king to spare him. Moses was educated, as Joseph was, and it is highly probable that he received the best education the ancient world could give. We must remember that Egypt possessed institutions of higher learning, and that Pharaoh Palace and Temple was the chief center of the educated class. Moses was exposed to the best Egypt had to offer. those who think Moses was just an ignorant religious leader are quite wrong. Moses knew the political, social, and natural sciences of Egypt. He learned the religious system, the political system, mathematics, geometry, biology, chemistry, anatomy, foreign languages, law, engineering, and military tactics. Josephus writes the following: Moses arrived at the age of maturity, and he displayed his virtue and abilities to the Egyptians. The Egyptians interpreted Moses' actions as their imminent doom and the elevation of the Hebrews. During the course of the Egyptian history, there were many wars with the Kushite kingdoms of Ethiopians. Sometimes this region is known as Nubia. When Moses had reached the age of maturity, the Ethiopians were making incursions into the Egyptian territory. The Egyptians were in a state of bitter distress because of their predatory attacks. Josephus said that they had penetrated as far as the city of Memphis near the Nile Delta. Because of the urgency of the military situation, the Egyptians made an inquiry through the oracles and of prophecy. They were told by their God to secure the assistance of Moses. Then Pharaoh commanded his daughter to bring Moses into his presence. But first, Pharaoh had to swear to his daughter that no misfortune would happen to him. Moses was brought into Pharaoh's presence, informed of the deteriorating military situation, and given generalship of the Egyptian army. The Egyptian priest gave only tacit approbation to his new assignment. They were skeptical of his loyalty and hoped that he would be killed in the ensuing battles. The Hebrews were greatly exuberant because of the promotion of Moses. They expected Moses to liberate them. Moses marshaled his army and marched southward. He did not follow the Nile, but he took the inland route, cognizant of the fact that the Ethiopians would be the most vigilant at the river. But the land route presented a severe danger. It was inhabited with deadly serpents, which this area produced in mass numbers. Legend says that these snakes fly in the air and descend on men unaware. For this reason, Moses devised an ingenious plan to combat these evil creatures. He filled baskets with an animal called ibis and transported them along with him. These ibis are very dangerous to the snake family. They fly after the snakes and consume them completely. When Moses approached the land of the serpents, he let loose the ibis, and they destroyed the snakes. Then Moses came up upon the Ethiopians secretly, vanquished them in battle, and demolished their cities. Those that escaped retreated to Saba or Sheba, their capital. Josephus says that Saba was a royal city of the Ethiopians, which Emperor Cambyses of Persia afterwards renamed Meroe after his sister. The capital of Ethiopia used to be located at Napata at the fourth cataract. Later it was moved to Meroe. Moses found the city of Meroe well fortified. It was surrounded by a high wall, and there was a river around the wall that made it look like an island. The city was constructed so strongly that when the water of the river became violent, it could not move the foundation of the city. The city of Meroe was extremely difficult to subdue, and the army was lying idle. Then the daughter of the Ethiopian king happened to see Moses as he led the army near the wall, fighting with a great gallantry. She finally arranged a treaty of peace with Moses, agreeing to surrender the city if he would marry her. Moses consummated the marriage and departed with his wife for Egypt. Moses returned to the capital of Egypt during the reign of one of the kings in the 19th dynasty, probably Ramses I or Seti I. The Egyptians hated Moses even more when they found out that he was successful in battle. The Egyptians became suspicious of Moses because they thought he would incite a slave insurrection, so they conspired to assassinate him. When Moses learned of the conspiracy, he escaped to the land of Midian. Ramses II was the fourth king of the 19th dynasty, 1292 through 1225 BC, and the son of Seti I. He was pure black, had thick lips and a broad nose, like the people of the western Sudan today. He was a warlike pharaoh, industrious and energetic, ruling Egypt for 67 years. In the early years of his reign, he engaged in the important campaign against the Hittites at Kadesh near Syria. The battle was indecisive. Finally, he signed a permanent peace treaty with the king of the Hittites, married the king's daughter, and the remaining years of his life were relatively peaceful. Ramses II is also known for his national public work projects. Because of these projects required the forced labor of thousands of Hebrew slaves, he is known as the Pharaoh of the oppression. He was a boastful, vainglorious, tyrannical personality who sought to astound humanity by covering the country with megalithic structures. This Ramses transferred the capital to the Nile Delta. The black Jews constructed the treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. Ramses developed the Nile Delta and had slaves build Egypt's megaliths. The colonnade at Luxor and its gigantic pylon, in front of which he placed 6 colossal structures of himself. Each of these statues was almost 60 feet high. Ramses II erased his predecessors' names from the records and substituted his own. The Ramses also constructed the Hypostyle Hall at Karnak and the temple called the Ramesseum at Thebes. During this period, Egypt enjoyed a high degree of prosperity, a great boom just before the recession. When Merneptah, the son of Ramses II, came to the throne, the entire empire was falling apart. Moses entered Egypt probably during the reign of Ramses II or Merneptah. He, Moses, was commissioned by the God of Israel to go down into Egypt and to tell the Pharaoh to let his people go. Moses did not have any great difficulty entering the palace of Pharaoh. He had been reared in the king's palace, and he knew the Egyptian protocol. He decided to enter the palace at the time that Pharaoh was entertaining various ambassadors from foreign nations. After Egypt was weakened and terrified by the scourge of the 10 plagues, Pharaoh agreed to emancipate the Hebrew slaves. Beginning with the reign of Merneptah and the kings of the 12th dynasty, Egypt was in a state of decline. There were revolts throughout the empire. It is evident that the emancipation of the Hebrew slaves may have triggered these revolts, producing a chain reaction. Weakness at home and attack from the external enemies marked the defeat and the decline of the empire. In the 10th century BC, the Libyans invaded Egypt and established the 22nd Babusite dynasty. Under this Libyan dynasty, Egypt tried to revive the empire. Sheshonq and Shishak invaded Palestine and entered into combat with the Davidic dynasty. At this time, most of Shishak's troops were Libyans and Cushites. After 200 years of Libyan rule, the Cushites invaded Egypt and the Middle East, making themselves a great power. Then the Abyssinians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, and Arabs invaded Egypt consecutively, terminating Egyptian rule. The ancient country of Kush was in the eastern Sudan region of Africa. During the Middle Ages, the Sudan was not united and organized as a single country. The Afro-Asian world considered the Sudan to be the territory extending from the Sahara Desert almost to the equator. Its widest part, nearly 1,000 miles. Also, it extended from the Atlantic Ocean to the highlands of Ethiopia in the east. Its longest part is about 4,000 miles. This vast area includes such countries as the modern Sudan, Chad, Niger, Mali, Guinea, Senegal, Gambia, Upper Volta, etc. During the colonial period, this area was divided into parts called the French Sudan in the west and the Anglo-Egyptian Sudan in the east. The word Sudan is an Arabic word meaning black. The Arabs called this vast area Balad as Sudan, the territory of black, because the tribe here were very black, unmixed tribes. In dealing with the kingdom of Cush, we find it is located in the eastern Sudan near the Red Sea. The country of Cush is situated on both sides of the Nile River between the third and sixth cataracts. The modern nation called the Sudan occupies this territory. The important cities of ancient Cush were Nutapa, Meroe, Musawarat, Kuru, Purgas, and Naga. There were two civilizations of the Ethiopian people in the continent of Africa. One was in the highlands of Ethiopia, with its capital at Axum. The second was located in the region of the present-day Sudan, with its capital at Napata, and the other times at Meroe. The people in the ancient country of Cush were called Nuba or Nubians as subnames. Other subnames they use, it would be correct to say, are northern Ethiopians who live in the Sudan. European writers make a practice of calling various tribes in Africa by the infamous names Negroes. True Africans are indeed Africans, regardless of what they look like. The Africans have their own tribal names, and they do not need the European appellations of Negritians, Negroes, Negrolos, or Negroes.